So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, with the draft just a few weeks away at this point, with the draft fastly approaching, there's been a lot of different scenarios and a lot of different suggestions of what the Detroit Lions should do with their second round pick, or with their second overall pick, right? There's been scenarios where the Lions traded away. There's been scenarios where the Lions stay and take Kyle Hamilton, or they stay and take Kayvon Thibodeaux. There are scenarios where they stay and take Aiden Hutchinson or Travon Walker, and now there have been even recent rumors suggesting the Lions may trade up to number 1 to guarantee the player that they believe is the very best in the class. But one thing I think is going very forgotten in this draft process is the Detroit Lions' second first round pick, the 32nd pick that they received in the trade while receiving Jared Goff and trading away Matthew Stafford, is still a vital part of this draft class. And I think it's a pick that not a lot of people are talking about, even though I believe it is the pick that is most likely to be on the move and is the pick that is most likely to either be traded away to move up or down in this year's NFL draft. So today we are going to be talking about the 32nd pick. Today we're going to talk about different scenarios, different players, and different outcomes of how the Detroit Lions could utilize this 32nd overall pick to maximize its value come draft night. So with that being said, with all the intro stuff out of the way, let's get into considering the 32nd overall pick and what the Detroit Lions should do with that pick. So the Lions, as I mentioned before, do officially hold the very last pick in the 2022 NFL Draft's first round, and they will make the last pick on night 1 of the NFL Draft. They received this draft pick in return for Matthew Stafford. Right a year ago at this point, just over a year ago, the Detroit Lions traded away franchise quarterback Matthew Stafford for 2 firsts, a third, and Jared Goff, and the Lions will now have their first opportunity to utilize one of those first round picks. Now, the Rams, of course, did win the Super Bowl a few months ago, so the Lions will be picking with the 32nd overall pick. Although a lot of people believe the 32nd overall pick is just a glorified second round pick, that definitely is not the case. And even though the pick may not be as good as, say, the 20th overall selection that Pittsburgh has, right, for losing in the wild card round, the 32nd overall pick still holds a lot of value and will still grant the Detroit Lions a lot of favorable talent. So let's first start off with the trading up scenario. This is what inspired the video. I found an article that talked about the realistic possibility and the realities of the Detroit Lions trading up with that 32nd overall pick, getting somewhere closer to the teens, maybe even the early 20s, and getting a far better player in this year's class. Now, honestly, if I were the Detroit Lions looking to trade up, I would want to trade up for one of these 4 prospects. The first of which is Nakobe Dean, the linebacker out of Georgia. He's a sideline-to-sideline player, very good in coverage. He is undersized, and he doesn't take on blocks very well. He won't be super good in the run game, right? You're going to kind of have to build around him and protect him from opposing teams' running games, especially power formations, and especially things that get offensive linemen to the second level. You're going to have to protect him from that, but as far as being a pass rusher, as far as being a pass coverage linebacker, and as far as his intelligence, his sideline-to-sideline speed, and his tackling ability, he could absolutely find a role with the Detroit Lions next season. So I think he is a potential player that you might look to include in this draft class if you're Brad Holmes, right? If Nakobe Dean somehow falls into the mid to late 20s, maybe you look to pull the trigger before another NFL team that is linebacker needy decides to pull the trigger first. And then I think there are a couple wide receivers that could really fit the Lions very, very well, but likely won't make it to the 32nd overall pick that they could be looking to trade up for. Now, with that being the case, I identified 3 wide receivers that I believe could really benefit the Detroit Lions in 2022, but likely won't be at the number 32 overall selection. The first of which is Drake London, the wide receiver from USC. He's a big body guy, runs really good routes, has great hands, blocks pretty well. He is, in my opinion, the second best wide receiver in this class, and I would be shocked if he makes it past the 15th overall pick, meaning the Lions would likely have to give up quite a significant amount of value in order to move up to that 15th overall pick or higher. So I think he is less likely, but if he does fall anywhere between the late teens and early 20s, I think you could at least consider pulling the trigger on that. Another player that I think could really be considered is Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks, after the combine and after his pro day, just ran a slower 40, didn't really test athletically like a lot of people thought he would, but Treylon Burks, watching the film out of Arkansas, is a phenomenal player. He runs good routes. He's very hard to bring down. He's a phenomenal yak wide receiver, which you can't really show at the NFL Combine, right? Because there's no tackling at your pro days, there's no tackling at the Combine. You can't really show off that strength, that contact balance, and that elusiveness at the Combine, which I think are huge parts of Treylon Burks' strength, right? His 40 time wasn't as good as you might like to see out of a wide receiver, which is causing him to drop a little bit, but I do think he will be a late first round pick. Maybe he does last to 32, but I would be surprised if he does. I think he goes somewhere in the mid 20s, just barely going before the Detroit Lions have an opportunity to take him. So if he does fall to the proper value, I could see that happening as well. And then my favorite player for the Detroit Lions to potentially trade up and receive would be Chris Olave, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Now, the Detroit Lions have their ex-wide receiver, right? They have DJ Chark, the 6'4", 210-pound wide receiver that runs a 4.34 40-yard dash and is just really, really good at a lot of different things. They have their ex-wide receiver. They have their slot wide receiver long-term in Amon-Ra St. Brown, but what they don't really have is a great Z wide receiver, right? They don't really have a great wide receiver too. Josh Reynolds, I think, will play that wide receiver 2 role. He is good, but he is not great. And when looking at the Detroit Lions wide receiving core outside of Josh Reynolds, their main priorities are route running and speed and their ability to create separation, right? Josh Reynolds does not create separation a lot. Like, he's not an elite separator. He's very serviceable and can do that. And when looking at the Lions wide receiver core, they prioritize separation, they prioritize speed, and they prioritize route running in order to get open. And there is nobody in this class that fits that build better than Chris Olave. Chris Olave is a little bit undersized. He's a little bit thin for the wide receiver position, but he may be the best route runner and the best combination of and he might be the best separator in this entire draft class. Now, Chris Olave may actually fall to the 32nd overall pick. It is extremely possible that that does occur, and if he does, I think the Lions should pull the trigger right then and there at 32. I think some teams are going to turn their heads away because Chris Olave is slightly undersized and is a little bit thin for the wide receiver position, but I believe he would fit the Lions perfectly, being a speedy route runner with really good hands, just has great chemistry with his quarterbacks when playing with them, had great chemistry with Justin Fields, great chemistry with CJ Stroud, and I know he's going to work very hard in the NFL to develop that chemistry with his NFL quarterback. Any of those players I think could be great picks in order to trade up for, but the latter two, being Treylon Burks and Chris Olave, may even end up falling to 32, meaning we do not have to trade away that pick entirely. Now, with that being the case, I don't see the Detroit Lions trading up in this draft. I don't see the appeal, and I don't see the reward outweighing the risk in this scenario, right? The Detroit Lions are in a very good spot at 32 to get either a wide receiver or an edge rusher in this class without moving up and without sacrificing significant value. In the 2020 draft class, the NFL record was set for wide receivers taken in the first round with 8. So unless there is an NFL record and unless there is a third of the first round being wide receivers, the Detroit Lions at 32 are guaranteed one of Garrett Wilson, Drake London, I can't think of his first name, but the Williams kid out of Alabama, Chris Olave, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, Christian Watson, or David Bell. They are guaranteed one of those 9 wide receivers, almost guaranteed with the 32nd overall pick. And with Jacksonville's offseason signing a lot of big name wide receivers and having a ton of capital put into that wide receiver position already, I don't see them taking one at 34, and I could realistically see any of those guys being available with the 34th overall selection as well. Maybe you can double up, or maybe you can wait for that wide receiver at the 34th overall position. And likewise, I think they can do the same with edge rusher if they don't go edge rusher at number 2. Again, there are not a lot of classes where multiple edge rushers go in the first round. I believe the record is just 4 or 5 edge rushers going in the first round. And even in a draft class with Chase Young, even in draft classes with Joey Bosa and Myles Garrett, who went number 1 overall, they did not have more than 4 to 5 edge rushers go in the first round of the NFL draft. And with this draft class being extremely deep at the edge position, that would mean either Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Trayvon Walker, Jeremiah Johnson, David Ajabo, Boye Mafa, Arnold Ebiketie, or Drake Jackson will be available at 32. And again, assuming Jacksonville goes Aiden Hutchinson at number 1, that means that they will not take another edge rusher at the 33rd overall selection, meaning one of those guys will almost guaranteed be at the 34th overall selection as well. So with that being the case, I don't see a significant enough difference between Chris Olave and George Pickens in order to verify and in order to, convince me that trading up is the right option. There's not a big enough difference between Christian Watson and Treylon Burks in order for me to, to consider and seriously, accept that, okay, we need to trade up to get this guy because we're going to miss out if we don't. This wide receiver class is incredibly deep. This edge rushing class is incredibly deep, and I don't believe trading up is the option or the right thing to do for the Detroit Lions. But what I do think is more realistic is the fact that the Lions may look to trade down from the 32nd overall pick. And I know a lot of people may be saying, okay, we have this 32nd overall pick. We have our second first round pick. Why would we trade it away in order to get lesser picks, in order to get second, third round picks either this year or next year? But honestly, the Lions are in a rebuild. And if you get a top 100 pick, I mean, yes, they're not all the same, right? That 32nd overall pick has value because of the 5th-year option, but because it is a first-round pick with a 5th-year option, that pick is going to have a lot of value to NFL teams looking to sneak into the back end of the first round in order to capitalize on that 5th-year option. And if Matt Corral or one of the big-name quarterbacks falls to the 32nd overall pick, I believe there could be some teams looking to trade up in a very similar scenario to what we saw with Lamar Jackson in 2018. In 2018, Lamar Jackson fell to the 32nd overall selection, where the Philadelphia Eagles, fresh off a win in Super Bowl 52, were sitting and waiting for a draft night call-up, and that is what the Baltimore Ravens did. They called the Philadelphia Eagles and offered up their 52nd pick, their 125th pick, and a second-round pick in 2019 in exchange for the Eagles' 32nd overall pick and their 132nd overall pick in the NFL draft. That 5th-year option is valuable, and assuming that these teams don't take a quarterback in the first round, I could see either the Seattle Seahawks, the Pittsburgh Steelers, or the Washington football team all looking to move up back into the first round after making their top 10, top 20 selection in this year's class, right? Maybe Seattle passes on a quarterback at 9, but they feel like Matt Corral could be their guy. They might want to move up to 32 to get that 5th-year option. Same thing with Washington. If they believe that a guy at 11, right, if Malik Willis is gone, if they don't feel like the value is right at quarterback at 11, they might take the best player available for their team, but look to move back up into the first round, capitalize on that 5th-year option in order to, get their quarterback of the future in the first round with a 5th-year option. And the Lions could see multiple second-round picks in return for that 32nd pick. And honestly, if we get a similar return to what Lamar Jackson got and to what Philadelphia got in return for Lamar Jackson, I mean, that is not bad value, right? I would be willing to move down 10, 15 spots in the NFL draft from 32 to 45, 46, even into the mid 50s if the Detroit Lions picked up an extra second round pick and a pick just outside of the top 100, very top of day 3, because as we know, Brad Holmes can absolutely capitalize on those selections. So now the question becomes, what do the Lions do? Do the Lions stay at 32? Do they pray and hope that maybe Chris Olave or Treylon Burks falls to the 32nd overall pick? Do they trade up? Do they look for Chris Olave or Treylon Burks or Drake London in the NFL drafts in the middle of the first round between the late teens and early 20s? Do they move up and sacrifice some future draft capital to get their guy? Or do they trade down and accumulate even more picks inside the top 100 to give Brad Holmes more ammunition and more attempts to get the pick right? I'd be very curious to what you guys think, but with all of that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below, what do you think the Detroit Lions should do with the number 32 overall selection in this year's draft class? I'd be very curious to what you guys think. With all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!